Defending Utah covers the stories others are just too often afraid to touch.
They don't nibble around the edges when it comes to pointing out threats to our liberty. They're not afraid to name names and call out organizations.
This is Defending Utah Radio, every Friday morning at 9 on K-Talk 1640. Defending Utah. Think right and wrong, not right and left. Join Defending Utah, because if you're not already on a government watch list, you should be.
And I am very excited to be able to introduce to you Dr. Stephen Jones, former BYU professor, who I'm going to have, this is going to be a great opportunity for you to be able to call in 801-254-1640. We are very excited to be able to have him on and to be able to talk to you about his research, things that he's coming up with now, some new books that he's actually just released on Amazon, and much more. Some of the history. If you've got a question, I know last time when we had Richard Gage from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth on last week, people called in and had some questions of why Dr. Jones left BYU, and but I think it's be a really good opportunity for us to just to bring Dr. Jones on right now. Dr. Jones, thanks so much for joining us this morning. Be with you. There we go. Okay, we got you.
We just caught you got it? The last second of what you said. So go ahead and introduce yourself again.
Okay.
Do you have a whip, Dr. Jones? Sorry, I'm all distracted. Carry on.
So it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. It's a beautiful day out here in Missouri where I'm located.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I think just a brief recap of kind of what started your research, kind of introduce what made you want to even look into what you looked into, and what did you find, and then kind of leading into what it was that you found looking at the wreckage of the Twin Towers.
All right. Well, I will say that a lot of this is explained in my book, and so I'm actually clicking to my book right now so that I can have that. But let me just say at the outset, we published a paper here in August, so 3 years ago, 2016, in Europhysics News. And that's what I would like to call people's attention to, and I'll help you find out how to get to that. But that article has nearly 1 million views now, article views, and over 168,000 abstract views. So people around the world are reading about our research. It's not just myself, of course. I'm joined by thousands of architects and engineers and scientists, and in this pursuit to learn the true cause of the World Trade Center destruction. How it began for me, which was your question, in 2004, I was encouraged by several friends to look into what really happened on 9/11. And one of these was a physicist, and he was quite puzzled by the way the 3 skyscrapers fell in New York City on that day, 9/11, 2001. And what set it off for me, I mean, I was curious at some level, but, you know, like everybody else, we've been told, right, the official narrative is that this was caused by hijackers, Muslim hijackers, and that's it. There was, and we had to go to war, therefore, et cetera. And, but I went to a talk by a gal named Sarah Monet, and Sarah was talking about preparedness, I think, as a topic that my wife and I were interested in. Anyway, in the middle of her talk, she paused and she said, if you think that those buildings came down on 9/11 just because a few hijackers hit the towers, you have some major surprises ahead of you. And about half the audience started applauding, and the other half, like me, just kind of sat there. I was bewildered. What are they talking about? But, you know, after about 4 or 5 nudges, I decided to research on my own time too, regarding the World Trade Center skyscraper collapses. And this was the first time that I had seen Building 7, that's World Trade Center 7, collapse. It was in the spring of 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I looked at that, you know what? I have to make a small correction. That's got to be the spring of 2005.
Oh, that's such a big different deal.
Your whole story just fell apart right there.
But the problem is it's in the book the wrong way. So I'm going to have to make correction in the book. Anyway, not a huge
glad
deal.
we could help.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Catching myself here as a there's a few typos. That's one of them. Anyway, so I looked at the collapse of Building 7, and I pulled out a stopwatch. So I was at my computer looking at this thing come down, and it's just amazing how rapidly the roof and it just comes straight down at Building 7, and it's the afternoon of 9/11. It was not hit by a plane. That's really important to keep that in mind. So you can't really blame it on an aircraft hitting it because it wasn't hit by a plane. No one even claims it was hit by a plane. Mm-hmm. Okay, so down it comes, and it's 6.5 seconds, which is check free fall for the height of that building, and it's 6.5 seconds. So then with the student, first of all, I told my chair, the physics department chair at the time, I said, well, I'm looking into this. And he said, well, you have full academic freedom. And I said, okay, thank you. And so I went ahead, and so with a student,
So he actually gave you permission to go ahead as a professor at BYU to move forward with investigating the work.
Sure. You can do the research you choose is
right.
What he was saying, and that's what I understood, too, as a full professor of physics. So with the student, we set up a simple program to drop a ball. So you think of a steel ball dropped at the height of the roof of World Trade Center 7, and you drop it, and it accelerates. Then we put this next to the video of the collapse of World Trade Center 7, and by George, those lined up for a long distance. Once that collapse started, it went at free fall acceleration. Now that is really amazing. And by the way, that result has been confirmed independently by another physicist, David Chandler, and then finally by NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Initially in their report, they said it was constant speed. And I called them up, and this was NIST giving a review, an opportunity for the public to provide input on their preliminary report on World Trade Center 7. So I called them up, and email. That's right, because they wouldn't let you call them. You had to submit through email. So I did. And I said, you guys have made a big mistake here. You might want to look at the data. This building accelerates. It's not constant speed. Please check your statement in your report. And I quoted them the page where they made this statement. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, here they are writing a report on the collapse of World Trade Center 7 and stating it just totally wrong. Constant speed. No, it's constant acceleration. And they knew the difference, of course, between speed and acceleration, and they just hadn't done their homework, which was itself a very telling fact. Anyway, they did change that in the final report, and they showed a graph, and sure enough, not only is it constant acceleration, but they came up with 32.2 feet per second squared, which is acceleration due to gravity, free fall. Mm-hmm. You drop a steely at the height of the skyscraper and drop it, and for over 100 feet, it was in free fall acceleration. Now, you think about that. If you drop a steel ball, if you put a stick in the way. It's going to slow it down, right? It's going to also deviate the path. But here we have this huge skyscraper with millions of pounds of concrete and steel. It was standing just 10 seconds before, and now it's at free fall.
Dr. Stephen Jones,
how do you do that?
I'm going to cut you off right there. We got to be headed to a break. We've got a lot of calls that we'll take when we get back from the break. Wanted to mention your brand new book that just came out, Challenging Einstein's Theory of Relativity. You can look that up on Amazon. We've got these on Kindle as well. Much more at K-Talk with Dr. Stephen Jones. 254-1640 is the number if you want to join the conversation.
Tired of bureaucrats and tyrannical government? Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, blacklotuswebdev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and the Water of Champions at championsneverquit.org.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU Smile.com to revitalize your smile. New Smile. It looks good on you.
Can't get enough Defending Utah Radio? Then follow us on Facebook and subscribe to Defending Utah's YouTube channel. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
Call him Dr. Jones.
That's right.
So we have Dr. Stephen Jones with us. He's a former BYU professor that has been looking and studying the physics behind the events that happened on 9/11. He's been writing, and he did this study about some of the materials inside the wreckage afterwards. He just came out with a new book, Challenging Einstein's Theory of Relativity, which is available right now on Amazon. Dr. Jones, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
So before we go on the break, you were talking about one of the experiments you and a student there at BYU were doing about dropping the bowling ball.
Well, okay, that was, yes. In effect, it was a small steel ball.
Gotcha.
And this was a computer-generated image of the ball dropping. Mm-hmm. So we put that, but at free fall, at 32.2 feet per second squared. We put that next to the video of World Trade Center 7 and its roof dropping, and they just went lockstep with each other for about 100 feet or so, a little over 100 feet, and that's what was observed finally by NIST after we pointed out their mistake in their initial report on Building 7, saying it was constant speed. I mean, I just couldn't believe it, but they did admit it. Now, let me follow up with that. So if you have take a ball and you drop it, you put something in the way. You can try a stick or a piece of paper or a million tons of concrete and steel, anything. anything is going to slow that drop down, that roof or the steel ball down, slows it down, just the mass of it. In addition to the fact, of course, that these steel pillars in the building were designed to support the roof. You know, they don't just give up. So, but somehow you have to move all this material out of the way in a very short time, all of it. And furthermore, the roof comes down basically straight down. It doesn't veer off, like way off to one side or something, like it's hitting material as you would expect it would be, deviated in its path. No, it comes basically straight down. And so you say, well, how can that happen? The only way that I know of, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you have to move that material out of the way rapidly. That requires explosives. And that was a central argument. It's based on physics, conservation of momentum, Newton's third law.
That's taking us into where I wanted to kind of get to. I didn't want to cut you off, but I want to be able to get to phone calls quickly, but I don't want to get to phone calls without you kind of giving an overview. So I want to maybe have you speed along, just kind of give a brief overview of kind of the whole history, and then we can kind of get to the calls, and we can kind of get into specifics. Specifics.
All right. Let's see if I can do a quick history.
Okay.
Yeah,
Tell
so
us about
let's
gravity,
go along. Let me get a move. Yeah, we're not going to go back to Isaac Newton, although in the second book of this series, the first book is about my 9/11 research and the history, and the second book is about challenging theory of relativity, and I actually do use gravity in one of the experiments that I propose to test Newton, or to challenge Einstein's theory of relativity. So that's actually relevant in both the 9/11 and the relativity challenge. The third book that I have is about cold fusion. Sometimes people forget, but I was actually heavily involved in the cold fusion brouhaha, I guess you have to say. I wasn't the one that claimed that I had enormous excess heat, but that whole topic is not dead, the cold fusion, and that's the third book. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I can't cover all those in a short time. That's why I refer people to the books. And let me just say, finding those books, they just became available Monday on Amazon. You go into Amazon and then you type Professor Jones, and it will bring up those three books. They're not. If you type Physics Professor Jones, then they're the first things you see, those three books.
Great. And they're on Kindle, so I want to make sure that people, if they order it, they don't expect a book in the mail. It'll be available on their Kindle device, or they can have the Kindle app on their iPad, or anything like that.
Your phone, yeah, you can read it on your phone.
Yep.
And it's inexpensive. They're $2.99 each, so
perfect.
And the minimum price for Kindle books, I understand.
So Dr. Jones, I'd love to ask you, when you were looking into this, and I think your reputation precedes you, and the facts that you talk about are really clearly noted in your presentations and everything we can find online. That I've studied you for years. You actually woke me up from this. I'm a mechanical engineer. Yeah,
good.
Yeah, 20 years as an engineer, and 10 some odd years ago, I saw your presentation at UVU online. And that's what did it for me, woke me up and pointed me to architects and engineers, which I've since signed their petition.
Good, me too. I've signed it, yeah.
But I wondered, when you were looking at this and you found this evidence, at what point did you say to yourself, this is a cover-up? And then at what point did you say, this means XYZ?
Yeah. Well, so going back to the spring of 2005, when I started studying this and saw Building 7 come down, then I started looking at, I looked at the towers too. They actually accelerate, not quite at free fall, but again, they accelerate on their way down. And that, is a big surprise. And there's various analyses now of the collapse of these buildings by structural engineers. And I point you to, as you mentioned, architects ae911truth.org. And there's various reports you can link there. And, of course, in my paper, actually, I talk about this, and in my book, I should say. Yeah. But
Dr. Jones, just last week we had Richard Gage on.
Yes, good. He's a good friend. Yeah, and he used heavily of my slides and my research, which I welcomed him to do. I was glad that he kind of picked up the burden of traveling around communicating about this so I could do other research. So that was great. But when I realized that this was a very serious, extremely troubling matter, and I lost some sleep over it, was really, I'd have to point to Building 7 and the fact that it came down at free fall and was not hit by a plane, free fall acceleration, not hit by a jet at all. And I realized, wow, all of that points to explosives. This is contrary to the official story and contrary to the government story. So there's something else very sinister going on here, and you look further, and then others have looked into who is suspicious, who's involved. Dick Cheney and his inaction on 9/11. That was extremely troubling as I learned about that. He was basically in charge in the bunker under the White House because President Bush was down in Florida. You may recall reading to school children at the time.
Right.
Of the collisions, and but Dick Cheney was in charge. But here's this plane now coming into the Pentagon, and he did nothing to stop that. I mean, I just could hardly believe that as I studied that history and heard the testimony of Secretary of Transportation Norma Mineta, very clear testimony about what Dick Cheney did not do. While the progress of this plane that hit the Pentagon then, as it was coming in, and it was being reported to Cheney, here it comes, it's getting closer and closer, and finally the young man, confronted Cheney, said, aren't you going to do something, and basically? Do the orders still stand? And Cheney angrily turned to him and said, of course the orders stand. Have you heard anything to the contrary? And then a few minutes later, the plane crashed in the Pentagon, killing about 170 people. So, I mean, it's just, you put two and two together here, and there has to be more of an investigation. By the way, that Norma Mineta testimony was given to the 9/11 Commission, but they did not include it in their report. It was a thick volume, but they did not include that testimony.
Interesting.
Which in their report.
Well, let's go to the phone lines if you want to be a part of the conversation. Sure. 801-254-1640. Pete on line 5. You've been waiting the longest. Thanks for joining us. What's your comment or question for Dr. Jones?
Well, I want to lay some stuff on the table, and in that process, if I can, I got a couple of questions I'll throw out to Professor Jones. First of all, Professor Jones, thank you for waking me up. I was starting to wake up, and then when I found out you were booted by BYU, I started to look into it more deeply. So some things that aren't addressed was not just the collapse of this structure, but the impending annihilation or destruction of everything there. There was 10 million square feet of concrete, 10 million square feet of corrugated steel panels. There's 2 acres of half-inch thick Italian marble, chairs, desks, computers, tables. In 06-07, they found fragmented pieces of bone and nails on the roof of the Deutsche Bank building. So,
right.
What I have my theory about it, understanding the secret combination getting Newtons. Well, what other force outside of the nanothermite to take out the columns would have caused such destruction?
Okay. That's a very good question, Pete, and I can tell you've done your homework. That's great. I just want to underline one thing that you said, and that is that there were hundreds of these human bone fragments found on the roof of the Deutsche Bank building. And that Deutsche Bank, I forget now, but it was several blocks away. So you think of the force that's required. I mean, we're not just talking about a pancaking collapse, right, where people would be unfortunately trapped in the building. We're talking about something that it's hard to talk about, very frankly. Fractures, splinters, human bone into tiny fragments. These are about a quarter of an inch long, various lengths,
right.
But fractured very small. So what force is it that does that? And that has to be, again, explosives. I mean, that is one of the...
That doesn't just happen with a building falling apart.
Right. It's not just the gravity.
I have my theory on that, and because I watched that building being built from the ground up. My dad was a mechanical engineer, and he explained everything to me. Understanding the long-term goal of these individuals, my theory was, and we don't have the information of the composite of the concrete. We don't know that, and I think that goes back with MK Ultra. But I believe, and maybe I'm way out there in the field, that some kind of component was mixed in with the concrete long ago, because it would take a massive amount of explosive to shatter not only the concrete, not only the steel panels, but the aggregate, the rocks, the little rocks that were in there. They were gone. All that stuff just disappeared.
Yeah, that's a good point, Pete. Dr. Jones?
Yeah. Again, when the explosives were put in is a good question, and it may go way back, as you say. That's certainly something that should be investigated. The point is there was explosives, and people were not exited from the building. I mean, they were killed as these explosives went off. So
I think that was actually brought up last week with
Richard Gage.
With Richard Gage, thank you. I don't know why I can't remember.
Yeah, someone had brought up that what if this was built into the building, and Richard didn't think so, but with the research he had done, but he thought it was part of the elevator renovation.
Yeah, and that seems likely to me too. But again, the fact that there was explosives used, and the NIST, the official government report, officially denies the use of explosives.
Right.
And yet we see this evidence so strong. Mm-hmm. I mean, right there, we've got a problem. We've got to have an investigation that doesn't involve the government itself providing. I mean, it's kind of a joke almost. You ask NIST. I talked to them. Well, they wouldn't let me talk personally to them. They wouldn't. I asked to meet with them on this subject. They refused to meet with me. So it was back and forth, and there was an investigative reporter that called me and then called NIST, and they would talk to her, which is interesting. Her name was, it's in one of my papers, which is quoted in my book, the 14 Points paper, which is quoted in full in my book, actually, the whole paper. But anyway, so this is Jennifer. She calls NIST, and she says, look, you say there's no evidence for explosives, but Dr. Jones questions, did you look for explosives? So answer that. Did you look? And the spokesman for NIST, remember, there's a government laboratory, said, well, no, we did not even look for explosives. And she said, well, wait a minute. How can you say there's no explosives if you didn't even look?
That's a great point, and we're going to have to leave it right there as we go to our top of the hour break, our news. We're going to have our news right now. We've got some callers on hold. You want to be a part of the conversation, give us a call. 801-254-1640 is the number, 801-254-1640. We have Dr. Stephen Jones, but Stephen Jones' books are on Amazon. More when we get back from the break.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, HigherCallingFirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, BlackLotusWebDev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and the Water of Champions at championsneverquit.org.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU Smile.com to revitalize your smile. New Smile. It looks good on you.
Decided voters are the biggest idiots on the planet. Try giving short, simple answers.
Sir, your question, please.
Mrs. Griffin, what do you plan to do about crime in our city?
A lot. Because that's what Jesus wants. 9/11 was bad.
I agree with that.
God, I can't believe how easy this is.
Mrs. Griffin, what are your plans for cleaning up our environment?
9/11.
Mrs. Griffin, what about our traffic problem?
9/11.
9/11 was bad.
It was really bad.
So this is Defending Utah Radio right here on Freedom Friday. It is September 6th, 2019. I'm Ben McClintock from defendingutah.org with my co-host, Kevin Paulson.
Hello.
And Micah Turner.
Hey.
And we are joined as this very special guest with Dr. Stephen Jones, famous BYU professor who did groundbreaking work on investigating 9/11. And we've been talking about some of the history. I want to get into now, and I appreciate you joining us today, Dr. Jones.
Sure. Yeah.
I want to kind of speed up a little bit into your research into thermite. And because this has been one of the things that a lot of the apologists will say, well, that's been debunked. That's just, that's not peer reviewed. So it's going to get us into your study of the thermite at the Twin Towers and the research and the kind of the what's been shown since then.
Sure. Okay. So thermite it comes in basically two. There's more than two types, but two types that are particularly relevant to the World Trade Center destruction. One of these is thermite with sulfur added, and the other is what we call super thermite, which is an explosive form of thermite, really extremely finely patterned and very tiny particles, so that it actually explodes when it's ignited. So going back to the first type, the thermite with sulfur added, that's called thermate. There's some excellent videos on YouTube. The Great Thermate Debate is one of these by a friend of mine. And in our papers, we talk about the fact that in the rubble, in particular, this is back to Building 7 again, in the rubble of Building World Trade Center 7, well, all three skyscrapers in the rubble, there was molten metal. So that's already a factor. And out of the South Tower, you see pouring out this orange-colored material before its collapse. And that was recorded on video. But then in the rubble of Building 7 was found a piece of steel, a section of a steel beam that had been eroded away. It had a Swiss cheese appearance, according to the scientists who looked at it at WPI, and this was in the several reports. They actually wrote a paper on this, a scientific paper, questioning how was it that this steel beam was eroded, and when they looked at it with an electron microscope, there was sulfur in the steel. There was oxidation and sulfidation, both of which required, plus the Swiss cheese appearance, required extremely high temperatures. And they just asked the question. They did not have an answer. How could this steel have been subjected to such high temperatures and sulfur reaction, sulfidation. And, of course, our answer to all of these observations, including the molten metal in the rubble of the 3 skyscrapers, was that thermate was used. And I reported those results in April 2006 at the Utah Academy of Arts and Sciences, and that was a conference held, and I wrote a paper, which is also, these are addressed in my book, of course, and presented those results. We had a vigorous exchange, which is peer review. I mean, these are scientists looking at my data, giving me comments back and forth.
So again, peer-reviewed.
Absolutely. The paper on superthermite was also peer-reviewed, published in the Open, let's see, that's a good question, Chemical Physics Journal. And open means that it's available to the public. We chose a journal which would make it available. You don't have to pay a fee to get at it. And, of course, this is linked in my book as well. And so anyone can read this. This is about the superthermite that we found in the dust, the samples, the provenience of these samples is well documented.
That's military grade. That's not something you can just go down to Home Depot and buy a case of.
That's correct. It's military grade. There was, and we quoted Los Alamos National Laboratory as having this available for demolition purposes, they said, and there we find it in the dust of the World Trade Center, unexploded. We also found spheres that match what happens when you do burn this material. Well, it's a thermite material, and then, okay, let me put it this way: you take the red gray chips, which contain the aluminum and the iron oxide, finely powdered forms, and we ignited those in a calorimeter, scanning differential calorimeter at BYU, measured the temperature output, compared that with superthermite. It matched up extremely well. Then we looked at the residue that we got from burning these red-gray chips, previously unignited. You find in there spheres that contain aluminum and iron, a very unusual combination otherwise. But from thermite or superthermite, it's a very common balance. I mean, you have both of those because they're involved in the thermite material and the superthermite. Anyway, we found in the dust these same spheres, lots of them, with aluminum. And this is what a lot of critics, I find, miss. It's in our paper, and why they miss it, I'm not sure. These are not just iron oxide spheres, which you can get from various things. Iron oxide is rust. This is iron with, it's reduced iron, first of all. The iron oxide has been reduced. There's not as much oxygen as you have in rust. And what you have also present is aluminum. Now, in the thermite reaction, what happens is that the oxygen is taken from the iron oxide and taken by the aluminum to form aluminum oxide, and that releases a great deal of energy. It's a reaction that has been known for, 100 years or so. I forget exactly when it was invented, but it's been used for many purposes. But again, the demolition aspect of superthermite is something that we explored and described in our paper, found the evidence in the dust in abundance. We published that paper, and a colleague of mine at BYU, Jeff Ferrer, was on that paper. Dr. Ferrer joined us, of course, on that paper. And I might say that shortly after that paper was out, my use of the underground laboratory, the electron microscope facilities, was curtailed. I was told, you can't do that anymore. You're an outsider. That's it.
So they didn't quite fire you. They first of all, they say you've got free access, you've got academic freedom, and you can look into this. And then out of the blue, they say now you can't use it anymore. Or?
Well, okay, it's step by step, getting worse for us. The first thing was putting me on administrative leave. That was in September, just before September 11th, incidentally. So that was
September of what year?
That was in 2006.
Okay.
September of 2006. So September 7th, as I recall, it's in the book, where I was put on administrative leave.
Did they explain
that took away my classes.
Did they explain why?
Okay, there's some explanation. It had to do, and again, I go through this in detail in the book, so you can read that. But, I mean, look, it's a private university. They don't really... Okay, they didn't really say too much. They said you can read about it in the newspaper. There was a short blurb in the newspaper because they had a press release when they put me on admin leave, and the press release said, for publishing his theory, I called it. I mean, I was doing experiments, but his theory about 9/11 in venues that were... Gravity. Yeah, in this case, well, yeah, free fall has to do with gravity. It's not. And, of course, I was doing experiments with thermite and thermate as well, and talking about those and publishing, as I said, with the Utah Academy of Arts and Sciences. But they didn't like my venues, two venues. I'd already had one was Utah Academy of Arts and Sciences. I don't know what was wrong with that. They never explained that. I mean, perfectly good. Lots of physics.
Pretty radical,
not just physics.
Extremist organization, sounds like.
Well, it's Utah Academy, you know, so, and lots of BYU professors publish there and speak there, as I did. I can't imagine. They didn't. So basically, what I did is I said, well, I would like to have a review. And this is, again, in my book. And that request for a review was denied. At that point, I didn't have much that I could do. But
some things that I've heard kind of rumored about, that there was threats from the feds. Go ahead.
That could be, yes. And again, I talk in the book about... This is important, actually, that Dick Cheney, we just mentioned him with regard to the Pentagon, and the lack of air defenses on 9/11, he was basically in charge, you see.
And this is a good opportunity for us, to take a break. We'll finish this explanation when we get back. This is Defending Utah Radio. I'm Ben McClintock with Kevin Paulson and Micah Turner from defendingutah.org. You can catch the replay of this program on defendingutah.org or on the Defending Utah app that you can download to your Android device, and you can join the conversation, 801-254-1640. More with Dr. Stephen Jones when we get back from this commercial break.
Tired of bureaucrats and tyrannical government? Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. defendingutah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, blacklotuswebdev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and the Water of Champions at championsneverquit.org.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801 254-0835 or visit gonewsmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New Smile. It looks good on you.
Dr. Jones, calling Dr. Jones, Dr. Jones, Dr. Jones, get up now.
That did take way too long. Sorry about that. This is Ben McClintock from DefendingUtah.org with Kevin Paulson and Micah Turner. We are joined on the phone with Dr. Stephen Jones.
We promise we don't like teeny bopper music.
And we've been talking about... before we went to the break, we're talking about the thermite investigation you went to, and then how you were declined usage of the telescope at BYU, and what led up to that was
microscope,
electron
microscope.
Right. Gosh,
well, it's like a telescope, but not at all.
Well, and you weren't acting alone. You weren't a lone wolf here. You had people working with you from around the globe, like Niels Harrett and other folks. And so, did you feel singled out?
Well, yeah, to some extent, that's for sure. I did want to follow up, if I could, that before the break we were talking about if there was outside and particular government influence. There certainly was. I just want to point as some evidence. I have others. It's in the book, but about Dick Cheney. Now, I was early retired in January, finally, is when I was
So you weren't allowed to use the material, so you decided to just retire.
Well, let me explain a little bit about that first. The materials restriction came after I was retired. I was allowed to use the facilities. I thought I would be able to do that and do experiments and research freely, but after I had retired, then the use of the electron microscope was excluded from me.
Mm-hmm.
But at the retirement, January. So after, let me just hop in. In April, so 3 months later, you may remember Dick Cheney was honored at the BYU commencement that April. He was given an honorary doctoral degree for public service, and also honored at the same commencement was Meyer Rothschild. Just extolled the virtues of these two men.
Wow.
And
I could go wrong.
Wow. And I was absolutely, I was appalled, but also amazed. I mean, I felt, and I had called for impeachment, which is a fair trial, by the way. That's really what impeachment is, for Dick Cheney to answer to what he had done or not done on 9/11, why there were no air defenses that day when he was in charge in particular. And there's other things, too, that implicate Dick Cheney. But we know that his office had contacted BYU. That was in the newspapers at this time period. And whether that had an influence on them to get rid of me, I suspect that. But
that'd be interesting if we could find out what it was that he talked to them about.
Yeah, that's right. But he was certainly honored. We know that. And by the way, the campus, to their credit, allowed 2 on-campus protests. You may remember that, too. And I participated in both of those campus protests about Cheney's coming to speak at the commencement there at BYU. So it's an interesting whole thing.
That's been one of that's the top question when people found out you're going to be on our program. That's what everybody wanted to know about. What happened at BYU? How come you left?
Right. And there's dozens of pages on this topic in my book. It would be hard to go through all of that.
Research or the
That's
challenge?
The 9/11. No, it's the 9/11 research book.
Okay, 9/11 research as a full professor of physics.
Right. Yeah, that's the one.
Great.
Yeah. I appreciate that opportunity to mention that because I get that question all the time, and I finally decide, I better write something up and explain it as kindly as I can, but at the same time, give facts that will help people understand, I hope.
I think some people would appreciate it, and I don't want to put you on the spot to do that, an unkind explanation, but...
There was a short film produced by an amateur called Hypothesis that we loved.
Yes, very good.
And that's actually what prompted me to actually go meet with Jeff Farrer I consider him a friend now, and he explained a lot of things to me. But I was wondering, did you? There's a quote in that movie where you say they asked you if you were afraid of what might happen if you continued to research this. Once you knew that it was nefarious, the 9/11 events surrounding it were nefarious, and more nefarious in a different way than what the official story said. So, and you said, "Well, I'm just doing physics. What's the harm with that?" And I think, my goodness, you are so. I just really admire your courage. Stephen, just
I appreciate it.
For what you've done. I mean, and people that try to impugn your integrity, look at what you've given up to tell the truth.
Right.
And to me,
I appreciate that.
That is what integrity is all about. You stand and you tell the truth, regardless of what the consequences are. What was going through your mind when you realized there were serious consequences that may happen when whatever dark forces are at work here get involved?
Yeah, I was concerned. Actually, I still am, some for my family, but I still pursue the truth. One of the big concerns that I had and still have is how this would impact my research. Because there's going to be 7 books. Finally, there's 3 available now, outlining the research pathways that I was pursuing, and just are still open-ended. I mean, the research was curtailed, as you can imagine, when I was, people say, kicked out of BYU when I was early retired. And so I am trying to get back and do research. That's really the impact that I had not realized. I thought I'd be able to continue to do research, and I did for a while, but then they started cutting back, on my laboratory privileges, as I mentioned, and took my computer and just funny little things, and but big things too. And finally, I was invited to give a colloquium at the physics department. This was on alternative energy, which I'd studied for my career. Muon catalyzed fusion, cold fusion, and so on.
And that's what your book, Cold Fusion is Not Dead, is all kind of covers?
Yeah, that's right. Cold Fusion is Not Dead covers that and talks about that colloquium. So what happened was I was invited to a colloquium at BYU, and it was canceled. And they didn't even tell me it was canceled. It was a friend who noticed that they had put somebody else in my slot, which, by the way, was in September of 2012. Things happened in September. Seems like to me, but
that sounds like a blacklist, like specifically not just like, hey, let's kind of part ways, but they're like trying to make sure that you have no voice.
Well, you might interpret it that way. Yes, I might say that immediately after that, I was invited to give the same colloquium at the University of Missouri in Columbia, which I, of course, accepted, and they received it very well.
So why would BYU not want to have you speak, but the University of Missouri would?
Yeah, that's a good question, and they would not. BYU would not give me an answer to that. I mean, there's one professor that suggested, well, maybe your alternative energy is pseudoscience, as a BYU professor. But what is that? How do you?
That's quite.
It's experiments. It's an accusation. Experiments define science, not what somebody calls it. Well, and calling it that in advance when you haven't even heard me talk about it is, of course, they'd heard me talk about cold fusion, but the latest in cold fusion is quite encouraging, actually. And so, and I think it's true that it's been very slow in coming. There's a lot of opposition for some reason to, I think, the truth in general, but certainly to cold fusion. And what we're trying to do, and this is a worldwide effort, mostly, frankly, at this time in Japan and Italy, pursuing cold fusion, but some in the United States as well. And as I predicted in my book, this is the book on cold fusion, there will be a breakthrough by 2021. I'm very confident of that. In this arena that could benefit a lot of people. That's our goal. And people probably remember that BYU
With the pushback against your research at BYU on thermite, what kind of a pushback do you expect to receive on cold fusion? That's a lot more money and power involved in that.
Right. Yeah, I'll watch for the pushback, but I think I'm a little better prepared for it this time. We are going to get the word out through shows like yours. When we get to that breakthrough point, we will have numerous people around the world replicating this at the same time. This is the plan, and we will make the announcement simultaneously in Japan and Italy and Europe, throughout Europe, South America. I mean, we're not going to let anyone keep us from speaking on this one. It's just too important to humanity that we get the word out. This group of men and women who are working on cold fusion right now is beleaguered. It's really amazing to me. I mean, it's evil spoken of everywhere by... I mean, if you talk about cold fusion, oh yeah, the hoax, yeah.
Right.
No, it's... And I try to go into that in the book to explain. There's, again, different types of cold fusion, too. And what we're looking at is not really the Pons-Fleischmann deuteron cold fusion. That has pretty well been debunked. That's true. But people have to realize there's a lot more to this field than that. I was doing so-called cold fusion long before I heard of Pons and Fleischmann. We published our results, including metal catalyzed fusion, which is what I prefer to call this, instead of cold fusion. But everybody knows the term, so you have to use it. But there's aspects of cold fusion that are true and solid and that are written up in my book. And, we're just making steady progress, and I expect a breakthrough by 2021. I really do, in this field.
So you've only in name only have you retired. You have continued to press forward and work in the physics field.
Well, that is true. I mean, I did serve a mission for my church in New Jersey, so, I take a break every now and then, so to speak. But in fact, it was while on my mission that I really felt strongly, you got to get back into this research. Break's over. So
did they try to? Did anybody, either at the university or otherwise, try and go after you financially? Try and get rid of like a retirement plan? Make sure that you didn't try to go after you, so you were hurt financially.
Well, no, I don't think so. Okay. That is, I have a pension, and I don't think that. In many ways, the university behaved responsibly, and I have a pension. I was there for over 21 years, so I do have a pension, and it's very helpful and has not been threatened that I can think of. So.
Gotcha. Okay, good information.
Yeah.
So we've had some folks waiting on the phone lines. Let's go to the phone lines. Let's go to line 5. You're on the Defending Utah radio program with our guest, Stephen Jones.
Stephen, welcome to the persona non grata whistleblowers club.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Both BYU and Washington, D.C. Do not appreciate my efforts or your efforts. I don't know if you remember me. We met down at BYU, or not at BYU, but a venue down in Provo where you spoke. I may have been at BYU. But anyway, curiously, I was employed by the Bell System, living in New Jersey in 68 plus. And I was actually employed by the Bell System as a quality assurance specialist, and we provided the inter-office data and communication systems in the towers. I was there when we were building the towers. I understand their whole structure, because we had the route wiring and cabling throughout the whole building.
Yeah.
I was sitting in my office the morning of 9/11. I had my TV on when the first alleged airplane struck the building. It caught my attention because right away the first thought that ran through my mind was, there goes the economy. Because I knew that in those buildings it was the the core of all the trading. Well, that's the name of the building.
Okay, we're going to hold you through the break. We're going to a break right now. So we'll let you continue on with your comment or question when we get back from the break. This is Defending Utah Radio right here on KTalk AM 1640. We are speaking with Professor Dr. Stephen Jones and on his research as well as his books that you can look at Amazon. You have 9/11 Research as a full professor of physics. You have Challenging Einstein's Theory of Relativity as well as Cold Fusion is Not Dead. All three available on Kindle at Amazon. Just search those books right there, and we'll be getting more details when we get back on the break with Dr. Stephen Jones.
Tired of bureaucrats and tyrannical government? Defending Utah knows how to fix that. It's called nullification. To find out more, stop by our office and pick up your pamphlet on nullification today. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
This Defending Utah presentation brought to you in part by Anderson Accounting, andersonaccounting.com, Trust Plumbing, 801-808-5470, Higher Calling Firearms, highercallingfirearms.com, Pioneer Family Scholars, Black Lotus Web Dev, blacklotuswebdev.com, American Appliance at 801-254-2566, Shem Financial Services, 801-856-6151, and the law offices of Garrett T. Smith, 801-477-1570, and the Water of Champions at championsneverquit.org.
It's a fact. More photos of you are being taken than ever before. Are you ashamed of your smile? At last, a new technology that gives a brighter and healthier smile in under 2 hours. And it's fully warranted, so you'll never have to worry about your smile again. Call Dr. Jeremy Thompson at Thompson Dental, 801-254-0835, or visit GoNewSmile.com, and we'll show you how you can restore your faded, yellowed, or worn teeth without surgery, crowns, or implants. And it's backed by a 30-day, 100% satisfaction money-back guarantee. This scientific breakthrough will painlessly transform your appearance in one visit. The smile you've been waiting for will never cost less or look brighter than it will today. Call 801-254-0835 or visit GoNewSmile.com. That's GONU smile.com to revitalize your smile. New smile. It looks good on you.
Can't get enough Defending Utah Radio? Then follow us on Facebook and subscribe to Defending Utah's YouTube channel. DefendingUtah.org. Think right and wrong, not right and left.
Welcome back to Defending Utah Radio. We are back on with Dr. Stephen Jones. And before we went to the break, we had a caller kind of telling the story about how, caller, just correct me if I'm wrong, that you helped do some of the phone wiring in the Twin Towers back when they were being built. So I'm going to ask you to, just so we can make sure and give Dr. Jones as much time as possible, get right to the point, and be able to get your comment or question.
Again, this is Tom. I'm Tom in Bountiful.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was sitting there in my office as that alleged first plane hit the towers, and the very first thought that went through my head was, there goes the economy.
Right.
Number one, that is the hub of World Trade, so it was a properly named buildings, or set of buildings. The core of the inter-office data and storage of data was Building 7. Because the weight restrictions in the towers, the heavy equipment, the filing, the paper, initially paper, and then it went to hard drives and computer, ended up in Building 7. So when I saw Buildings 1 and 2 go down, I realized Building 7 had to go with it because that's where the data was. All the banking and inter-office or inter-business exchange records in Building 7. But when they said there were 3,000 people lost in that building, I said, are you nuts? Because at 9 o'clock, from 9 o'clock until noon, those buildings are at full complement. There was close to 12,000 bodies in the building at that time. Anyway, I just wanted to share with you. So have you looked? I also had a friendship with the granddaughter of General Patton. And she told me of a meeting held in Iron Mountain in 1974 when all of this stuff was pre-arranged. Does that make any sense at all?
Thank you,
That
John.
does.
Appreciate that. Dr. Jones?
Yeah. Yeah, let me say, especially about pre-arrangement and Building 7, I was very curious. It was not hit by a jet. It fell 7 hours after the towers had come down. So, you can't blame it on the towers came down, and it was 7 hours later.
Mm-hmm.
And then it came down at free fall acceleration. Now, the pre-arrangement, I've heard that also.
After Silverstein said to pull it.
Yes, that's an example. Silverstein was the owner or the leaseholder, and he had insured these buildings just several weeks before the 9/11. He'd insured them heavily, and he got something like $4 billion. We're in the billions of dollars in insurance payouts to him. Incredible. Suspicious. But the pre-arrangement, I've heard that before, and there's a lot there that needs to be followed up. And Tom's information about pre-arrangement, I'd like to hear about that. We don't have a lot of information. There is a young man that came to me and told me he was really afraid of losing his job. I won't mention his name, but and it's not in my book, but because it's private, but he said he knew because of communications. As he has a PhD, as he's getting his PhD and studying just this very thing about how leaders behave under pressure, he was informed that indeed there was a decision made to take these buildings down by explosives and blame it on the Muslims and so on. All of that was prearranged. And so all that information out there, is latent. Somehow the 9/11 Commission did not pursue these avenues. They didn't even put Minetta's testimony in their report, So there's a lot of loose ends, and I do believe that there is justice ultimately, if not, but probably on this earth as well. The Civil War is an example of the justice that God provides, and it's just better to face the facts and do the justice and, do our best to get the truth out. That's what I'm trying to do.
So for people that may be skeptical, what are some things, what are some kind of bullet points that will at least help them lead them in the right direction, or maybe the bullet point will help answer their question?
Sure. Of course, a lot of these bullet points are in my book, and not just because I'm trying to sell them as cheap as I could, but they are there. And the other thing is, as mentioned by one of you, the bone fragments, the human bone fragments on the top of the Deutsche Building, hundreds of yards, I think it was 600 feet, anyway, hundreds of yards away from the towers. How do you get human bone fragments unless there's explosives?
Right.
That's a bullet point. The molten metal in the rubble, the sulfided and heavily oxidated, this oxidized steel beam that was found in the rubble of Building 7. Where did that sulfur come from that attacked that beam? As in an early report, again, ignored in the NIST final report. I don't know how they get away with doing things like that, but they did. And the destruction of the steel, members, the lack of air defenses that day, Dick Cheney's role in that, and of course the observation of superthermite, very strong evidence for that we provided in our published peer-reviewed paper that was published in 2009.
And there was one that just came out recently out of Alaska.
Yes.
Yeah,
that was on Building 7.
Leroy Halsey.
Yes.
They just published.
Engineer.
Yep.
Right. And again, that's available. You can go also then to ae911truth.org and get references to many of these papers. And they're doing just a great job in bringing forth the truth.
So how is the research that you're working on right now getting funded? Is there something listeners can do to learn more about how to help out with that?
Yes, well, that's a good point. I'm still struggling with lack of funding. So the books may help on that. I'll be glad, actually, if I can recoup what I put in to get them edited and published. But anyway, that's one way. I may set up something else. Frankly, what I'm hoping for is that there will be people who will pick up these ideas and pursue the research. Students are great at that. Other professors who have the boldness to study, cold fusion. It's going to be an effort around the world. It's not just me. I would love to do more, but I am constrained financially. Obviously, I don't have much, and I don't have the students that used to work with me and the laboratory facilities.
Mm-hmm.
That was just such a loss. That was the biggest loss for me, not the salary, but the loss of laboratory facilities and students and just the opportunity to communicate, the colloquia and the
So if we could get another university out here in Utah to allow access for you, we'll get you moved out back here, right?
Yeah. So
that would work, yeah, if you could.
Yeah, so in terms of your
it has to be research-oriented, though.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well,
I am trying to set up something here in Missouri, but if we get some funding, then we'll, with one of these energy projects, then we'll be able to move that along better, too.
So I'm curious, Dr. Jones, with the people you're working with now on fusion, but also on any residual work you're doing on the 9/11 investigations, how are you splitting up your time? And if you had, let's say you did have research facilities and people helping you and a budget, how would you go about divvying that up?
Well, that's a good question. So I will say this. In the little town that I'm living in, there was a business building that came up for sale, and I had saved up some money. We sold some property in Utah, actually, as we moved here, and it's a 5,000 square foot building. It's in fairly rough shape, but it's good enough for a laboratory, and that's where I would center. It's just a few blocks from my home. It's amazing, and that just came up again a few months ago. And so that is where I would like to do the research. I'm setting up there. As far as splitting up my time, lately, the last several months I felt I need to write these things down. Life is finite, and I want to get these ideas out there to people. Even if I'm not involved, others can pursue. There's my best ideas and inventions are going to be in these 7 books, which I'm basically giving away. I mean, $2.99 is as cheap as you can sell them on.
Yeah, they don't let you. They don't. If you wanted to sell it cheaper, they wouldn't let you.
Yeah,
that's right.
Everybody should be buying these and distributing them, and then trying to help you in some way. I mean, maybe we can start a GoFundMe or something like that just for furthering your research. But
that'd be great.
You're
something
a true
like
scientist.
That.
I mean, you're.
Well, thank you. Let me say about dividing my time. That's a tough issue. I'm actually looking to see where. Okay, my primary interest right now is in relativity and cold fusion, but not cold fusion understood properly, not Pons Fleischmann stuff. For them, light water was the control. For us, light water is the fuel. So you'll have to read the book to understand that, but it's completely different, really. But it has the same name because it's sort of related. Anyway, I'm dividing my time between those two right now, but there's other projects I'd love to do, and they'll be outlined in the other books as they come out.
Well, I know at least for me, I hope you are successful in pursuing this and that you don't have to give up your dream of pursuing more scientific research in all these areas.
Oh, thank you so much. That is my dream, and of course, to do it with others is a big part of this dream. It's not just me doing it. It's something I love to do in conjunction with others.
So do you have physicists and scientists out there in Missouri that help you, or you're talking collaboration across the globe?
It's more across the globe, internet and phone. And we live in a nice, quiet environment here, actually, in Missouri. And people don't bug me about, I mean, they're just very nice people. It's a rural community. And as I say, I got the business building cheap, and things are just opening up in that way. So now mostly, I have people, like I have an engineer call me from Washington State. He's got some devices that relate to cold fusion. He calls it Star in a Jar. That's a good title for it. And there's a lot of opportunities that, and I'll be going there soon, I expect. Anyway, that open up when you prepare a place to study and you get some ideas out there and you're sharing. Others want to share back, is what I'm finding. Yeah. I have good friends in Italy and Japan as well who are studying this energy, cold fusion. It's actually, cold fusion properly understood.
Yeah,
right.
And and so things are opening up. I'm pretty happy about the way things are going in the last year and a half. It's really opening up, and I appreciate being able to talk with you guys. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, this is a venue for you to be able to come back anytime and be able to let folks know what's going on, because there's, as you've seen, there's not a lot of venues out there for people that are actually looking at the actual science and the truth of what's going on.
Right. Good point. Yeah. There is a concern about it does seem to be an effort to squash ideas and truth. That does seem to be a real effect, but I'm so glad there are people like you that give us a chance to speak out. Very helpful and encouraging.
We've done a number of shows on media censorship, and it's a big deal right now.
Yeah.
So, folks, I just wanted to remind them, just on Kindle, hopefully maybe even a print edition soon, but on Kindle right now, I don't know if you're planning on doing a print edition. If there are options on Amazon that I can help you with, if that's something you're interested in, and you haven't been able to do that yet. But on Kindle right now, 9/11 Research is a full professor of physics. You have Challenging Einstein's Theory of Relativity, and Cold Fusion is Not Dead. So those are all available right there on Amazon.
And if you want to watch that video hypothesis, of course, not you, Dr. Jones, but the listeners.
Yeah.
I purchased the video and maliciously uploaded it to YouTube like last year, because the one that I had on
keep
YouTube,
shutting it down.
They deleted it. They shut down the guy's thing, and so I was like, okay, screw you, YouTube. I'll put it up there too. And then so. For the listeners, you can type Micah Turner into the search bar, and there's a picture of me in a dinosaur onesie with a tie. And you click on that. Yeah,
and if the FBI is listening, I condemn piracy. So
and there's a bunch of you can type in hypothesis into my search thing, and then it should come up. But there'll be all kinds of weird videos in there that I just sample across for our own purposes. I don't know why anyone subscribes to me, but I got like 100 subscribers. Anyway, but yeah, you can watch the video there if listeners are curious.
Excellent film.
And
Very
so
well
we've been talking with Dr. Stephen Jones. This has been McClintock from defendingitutah.org. We'll see you all next week. Thank you, Dr. Jones.
Thank you so much.